Happy May the 4th. See from there what we're getting. Okay. What we're going to get through is we'll read chapter 2 tomorrow. If you have not read chapter 3, that's fine. We are starting with chapter 4 tomorrow. And so we're going to leapfrog to that when your homework becomes it. Friday, we're going to read chapter 5. And then the quiz will be, I think I'm going to move the quiz to being like a homework like we did with the Outsiders test. And just have it be a thing you guys can take home and do over the weekend. Because some of you guys may have fallen behind with reading. May have. And we'll try to help you guys out from that as best as we can. Let's see, from there, finishing, blah, blah. No more iLearns, at least that's something.
Sadly.
No more computer responding when I click on it.
Just hit it really hard like a TV. Wait, it's your birthday today, Sam? In between two.
No, it's not.
There's 20 other people. Honestly, birthdays. You're not special. I like bowling. No, I have that kid. I'm just racing another kid.
There we go.
I don't know.
If you are ordering the Field Day shirt, it is due tomorrow. There is no late ones. If you don't have it turned in, you're out of luck. And then just giving you the information from there, we will be... correct. You're going to finish chapter 3 for tomorrow. We're reading chapter 4 together.
Can I put my feet on my desk instead? No.
Sounds
Can you try to
uncomfortable. You can try.
Are we chapter 3 right now, right? Yeah.
Are you sassing that poor girl?
Ordered the wrong shirt.
And again, those of you who don't like reading, I put the audiobook up there to try and help you. Everyone loves. So we left off with them having the fights in the alleyway, and then they went to the sign language, and then finishing chapter 2, they had the hippie, which was Randy, Randy is also from Outsiders. That was Bob's friend who didn't want to fight, and then eventually becomes a hippie, gives them the ride. And then he talks about going to the hippie house. Those of you who have gotten to the end. By the way, those of you, because I know a handful of you have finished it, as we go through it, things are going to start making more sense because there's little foreshadowing things that pop up. Like when it talks about Randy and the hippie house. Hopefully that makes more sense now with what happens later on. And then the vodka, this was when Brian was saying that he hates cops because he's never had a good interaction with them. And at one point he talks about the fact that he got drunk with friends drinking a fifth of vodka. If you don't know what a fifth of vodka is, 1, good. 2, it's like a large bottle of it. And so apparently he got drunk on that with friends and then got picked up by the cops, and the cops beat him up after he got drunk and then dropped him off in the wrong part of town, so he had to walk home. And he was like, I don't like cops because they're mean to me. And then he starts flirting with the girl that's on the front cover. This is Kathy. And while he's flirting with her, he mentions the fact that she's not wearing a guy's ring. It is a thing in high school. If you're going out with, if you're a chick and going out with a dude typically, and the dude gets a big class ring, it is sort of your way of saying, I have a boyfriend, or if you're a dude, it's a way of saying, this is my girlfriend. And so you'll wear the other person's class ring. It's like on a necklace or something like that. And so Brian's like, I'm always looking for a girl wearing a class ring because that means she's taken and I don't want to get my butt kicked. And so he starts flirting with Kathy and realizes she doesn't have a ring, which means she's fair game. So he goes full flirty flirt with her. The hospital that they're staying in is what's called a charity hospital. It essentially means you don't have to spend money to go there. And they're not really around very much anymore because apparently the world doesn't like people who don't have money. And so they force you to pay. But at one time we had things like charity hospitals where you could go and no matter how much money you had, they would still help you out. And so that's where they meet this kid. And so this is Mike, the story we're going to get into right here. It's interesting. The story of Mike is either going to confuse you or anger you, or maybe a little bit of both. Let's get to it on page 34.
I can understand that language.
So this is going to deal with a kid who's in the hospital, and Brian's mom's like, hey, will you guys go over there and talk to him? So Brian goes over to talk to Mike, and Mike tells him the story of how he's in the hospital. So hang on, let's go with, there's Brian. And we find out that Mike looks like he was in a car wreck. His face is completely torn up. So I'm going to start at the top of page 34 with them smoking in a hospital room, because that's just fun. Okay, I said. I lit up a cigarette and put it between his lips. When I took it back, he said, thanks. Man, I haven't had a cigarette in a week. My name's Mike Chambers. Mine's Brian Douglas. Man, you look awful. What happened? I was beginning to be glad I'd come in after all. I mean, it must have been rough being kept in a hospital that gave you the creeps with no way to talk to. I got beat up, he said with a wry smile. I couldn't believe it. I thought he'd been in a car wreck or something. What's the other guy look like? It's a long story. You got time for a long story? Sure. I really do like listening to stuff that's happened to other people. I guess that's why I like to read. Well, if it seems like I'm never going to shut up, just tell me. You and Mark are the first people I've talked to in a long time. There ain't much to say to these nurses. I could see that. I mean, what can you say to nurses? Well, Mike began, I always had this soft spot for chicks. And I was always making like Sir Galahad, opening doors for them, complimenting even the homely ones. And, well, I beat out a lot of guys better looking than me. I never could figure out why. But it wasn't just a line with me. I guess I'm a sucker. I've been taken a few times, like loaning money to chicks who come on with a sob story. But I'll always believe the best about a girl until I'm proved wrong. That's my own hang-up. That explains the way I acted that night. The gang and me was hanging around the drugstore, and this black chick came in to buy some cigarettes. Me? I just see a nice-looking chick with really beautiful eyes, like all black and inky soft. I guess I'm a little funny that way. I don't know. They just don't really get me all upset. I mean, I can see a black guy and a white chick together. It sure don't bother me. Well, most white guys can't stand to see that. Like the gang. The minute she walks in, they get all tensed up because black anyone, chick or otherwise, it just don't happen to come around much where I live. I guess she worked downtown, got off late, just stopped in on her way to the bus stop. I think she told me that later. I don't remember too good now. So she gets her cigarettes and starts for the door when a couple of guys block her way. Now, the gang I hang with is a pretty good bunch of guys. I mean, a lot of heart, only a couple of wise apples in the group. But see, nothing much had been happening, and they were bored, so they start picking on the chick, calling her Black Beauty and some other choice things. They were really getting rude, and I was feeling sorry for the girl. She kept her eyes down and just said, "Let me get by, please," real soft-like. Well, the guys, they started pushing her around, not enough to hurt her, but enough to scare her plenty. She just gripped her purse with both hands and tensed all over like she was trying to keep from running, which was pretty smart. Running, that's just an invitation to be chased, and if she got caught, it wasn't going to be in a lighted drugstore. The old guy who runs the drugstore just disappeared. He was scared silly of the gang. I don't even know why. It's not like we ever even done anything to him. When one of the guys grabbed hold of her and really got crude, I got fed up. I went over and said, "Let her go," like I meant it. They all looked at me for a while, like they were trying to make up their minds whether or not to jump me. We don't usually go around beating each other up, but this happened. They finally decided not to. My big brother, he's got a pretty big rep as a tough guy in our neighborhood. I mean, he's in jail now, and that's why he don't come to see me. It was his rep, not mine, that stopped him, because I ain't never been known as a tough guy. So they turned her loose and went back to reading comics, and I followed the girl outside. She was looking up and down the street, kind of desperate-like, and I knew she'd missed her bus. I said, "Hey, girl, if you've missed your bus, I can give you a ride home." She kept her eyes down. Finally, she said something. But brother, I ain't gonna repeat it. I saw then and there she thought I had evil intentions. I mean, alright, I don't blame her. Heck, if I'd had to take what she just did, I'd be sore and suspicious too. I said, look, I don't want to pick you up or anything. And she gave me a funny look, so I added quick, no, not that you're not real cute or anything. I mean, you'll have to stay here like another hour to catch the next bus, and I'll be leaving. And I don't know what those other guys might do. She saw the logic in that because it was getting dark. Not too many cops come around that area. It's kind of a deserted street. You know how cops are. There's a million over on the ribbon making sure the nice kids don't kill each other or run each other down while we can cut each other's throats, and they don't care. Finally, she said she'd let me drive her home. I have my old Ford parked in the drugstore parking lot. It's really my brother's car, but he said I could drive it any time he got busted. which is often. He's a pretty good guy, but if you've got a rep for fighting, somebody's always trying to take you on. The last time that happened, my brother busted a bottle over the guy's head and got charged with assault with a dangerous weapon. He never used weapons before, but he finally got fed up with the whole routine. It wasn't his first offense, so they sat on him kind of hard. Anyway, we get into my Ford, and I can see the poor kid is still scared. She sits hugging the door on her side like she's going to jump out any second. I got a couple of good looks at her. She was real slender. Looked like she sort of sway in the wind, and her hair was down to her shoulders. It must have been straightened. She had on a yellow dress and yellow shoes, and she had a straw purse just sitting on her lap. She held on to it with one hand and the door handle with the other. She really was cute. I started talking to her about just everything. Would her old lady chew her out because she was late? My old lady did. Man, they never liked anything you did they? But still, sometimes you couldn't get along without them. I said, did you go to school? I mean, I did, but boy, it's really a heck of a place to spend all day. I wanted to drop out, but the old lady said she'd kill me if I did. I kept talking because that's what I do with animals when they're hurt and scared. Pretty soon they get over being scared. I've got to hang up with animals too. I could tell she was beginning to calm down a little. At least she let go of the door handle. I even got her to smile once. I forget what I've been saying. And then I said, I'm sorry about what happened to you back there. And suddenly she started to cry. Oh man, that got me so shook. Nothing gets me shook like chicks crying. Mark stopped here. I gave him another drag on my cigarette. That's funny, I said. I mean, chicks crying just bore me. Go on, Mike, finish your story. Well, I didn't know what to say to her. I finally said, hey, don't cry, which never does any good. She kept on sobbing, and now and then I'd catch a word or two. I got the idea that she was fed up with getting walked all over by white people. I could see that. I get fed up with getting walked over by the fuzz, teachers, my old man, the upper class kids at school. So I could see that. Brian, do you know that my old man keeps my mother from coming to see me? Said I was a dumb kid for ever getting into this hospital. Anyway, this chick, she tells me about her problems, and she uses some pretty bad language, but nothing I ain't heard before from white chicks. I finally pulled the car over to the curb and reached into my pocket. She sat up straight, got all tight. What we stopping for? She says. And I said, I thought I had a handkerchief, but I guess I don't. I pulled back on the street. She looked at me for a minute. I kept staring just straight ahead, but I could tell that she was watching me. And she said, thank you. I drove her home. She lived way out on the north side, where most of the black kids live. You know where. It's actually a pretty lousy neighborhood, and it's about as bad as mine. As I pulled up in front of her house, I could see a bunch of kids hanging around on her porch and in her yard. Well, here you are, I said, a little nervous. I mean, for somebody who'd been practicing in her mind how to get the door open, she was pretty slow about getting out. At least that's how it seemed to me anyway. I think she was tired out from crying so much. Then there were all these black kids around my car. Some big guy opened the girl's door and pulled her out and said, "What's the matter, Connie? What happened?" And you could tell she'd been crying. Well, then they opened my door and dragged me out. It seemed like there was 100 black faces staring at me. I guess it was really just about a dozen, but it seemed like 100. I just stood there, backed up against the car. Talk about scared. Man, was I scared. To top it off, the chick had started crying again, so she couldn't talk. Mike paused here for a minute. He was staring off in the distance. And when he started talking again, it was slowly, like he was living the whole thing over again. The big guy came around to my side of the car. "Did you hurt her, white boy?" "No," I said. It didn't sound very loud, so I cleared my throat. "No, I didn't!" So loud that it sounded like I was shouting. It was real quiet. You could hear somebody's TV from down the street and a dog barking a block away, and Connie's soft sobbing. I could even hear my heart pounding in my ears. Then the big guy said, really quiet like, "What if we don't believe you?" And I got so scared I was about to cry. And I said, "Ask her, huh? You just ask her." The guy called across the car, "Connie, what you want me to do with this white cat?" And real soft, Her voice was so soft, just like her eyes. She said, "Kill the white boy." And sure enough, they almost did. There was a long silence. I think Mike had forgotten I was even listening to him. Then he took a long breath. That's how I got here. I mean, I must be a dumb kid like the old man says, though, because I still don't hate him, least of all Connie. I mean, I can almost see why she did it. Almost. I shook my head. Man, that's a rotten thing to happen to anybody. It sure is. Mark's voice came from behind me. He'd been standing in the doorway, I don't know how long. "Come on, Brian. Hey, here's your comics." He tossed a couple of monster comics on the bed. As we got into the elevator, Mark said, "I'm inclined to agree with his old man. That is one stupid guy." "You mean it?" I'd been thinking about Mike's story. I could see his point about not hating the people who beat him up. "Yeah, I mean it. Man, if anybody ever hurt me like that, I'd hate them for the rest of my life." I didn't think much about that statement then, but later I would. I still do. I think about it and think about it until I think I'm going crazy. And those of you who have finished the book, hopefully that means probably just a wee bit more, that little ending bit there. Yeah. So with that part, the Mike and Connie thing. Does Connie hate Mike?
Yes. No. She said to kill him.
She did.
Well,
but is she mad at Mike?
No.
Who is she mad at? Yeah. And so what it goes down to is the fact that when you have been put down and attacked for a long period of time, after a while, you get fed up and you get a level of anger that's... With Connie, she doesn't hate Mike. Mike's a nice guy and Mark was friendly to her, which is why she's crying at the end. She knows what she's going to do and she knows it's not a good thing to do. But at the same time, when is she ever going to get a chance to get revenge on somebody who did a horrible thing to her? And so for this one, she sacrifices a little bit of her soul to get revenge. It goes back to that conversation we had before about whether revenge is worth it. And here, for Connie, she takes revenge on him. Does Mike hate her?
No.
Same thing. He was like, I completely understand. He's like, there are people I would absolutely get revenge on if I got the opportunity. For some of you, it's probably the same idea. There's every chance that there's teachers you hate, other people that you don't get along with, that if you had the chance to be mean to them, you would. And so that story, even though Mike doesn't come back in the book, the theme of that, of what he went through, plays a big role. Tomorrow we begin chapter 4.